Welcome to the Beyond Cinema Studio, presented by Celebs.com up here at Sundance, Mr. Alex Gibney. Firstly, congratulations on having the film screen here and have its world premiere last night. I was there. What does that feel like for you still? Do you still get excited having world premieres, especially at a place like this?
Yes, and particularly for this film, because I wasn't sure exactly how people were going to take it, to be honest with you. It's the film ended up being a lot different than I would have imagined it at the start.
That's exactly how I felt and have felt about WikiLeaks generally. It feels like I feel a sense of betrayal almost.
Almost. Yes.
Did you start the project with that hope? Was that discovery made over the course of making this film, or
it was made over the course of making this film? I started out the film. I thought it was going to be a simple David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
And Julian Assange was David.
Right.
And then it wasn't that. It was, suddenly David became Goliath in a funny way in terms of affect. And then also I discovered a character that had been too much ignored in the story, who was Bradley Manning.
Right.
And his story turned out to be very poignant. And not only that, but we figured out a way to tell it. So all those things, as part of this, became discoveries in the process of making the film.
And especially seeing James Ball at the premiere last night, I was thinking he more than anyone should feel this kind of sense of loss, because he was out there advocating, standing up for Julian in a very public way, standing in for him, doing all these interviews and other things, kind of talking about WikiLeaks, even though he was supposed to have this objectivity as a reporter. There was definitely an affection there that caused him to kind of stand up on behalf of WikiLeaks.
There's no doubt. Look, James Ball was a true believer.
Yeah.
And that's why he was there. He was a soldier in the WikiLeaks army.
Yeah.
But I think he felt betrayed. And at the end of the day, he's a very savvy observer of what happened, very textured observer. I think other people who fall out with Julian get very angry, and then it's all bad. James can see the good and the bad. He can see the gray, not just the black and the white.
Even though you saw this happening and it happened in front of your eyes, did you find yourself holding on to your image that you wanted him to, the kind of the picture that you wanted him to be? Did it take you a while before you allowed yourself to present him as he is now, perhaps a little flawed?
Well, I think what I ended up doing was finding a way to present both.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that I think he was a much more sympathetic character before he became famous. Particularly right around the time of Collateral Murder, or in between Collateral Murder and the Afghan war logs. This is a guy who's doing something very new, and he's idealistic, he's uncorrupted, and luckily for us, that was captured by an Australian filmmaker named Mark Davis. And, we spoke to Mark and then included him kind of in the story, sort of a story within the story,
right.
A film within the film. And we used his footage to show a more, I don't know exactly innocent would be the way, but a far more idealistic and a far less corrupted Julian Assange.
Yeah,
so we could have that and then also have the other Julian Assange.
I was surprised to see so much footage of him being a thinker. Like so much of him not performing for a camera, so much of him just relaxing in the back of a car. It seemed like he was engaged and always kind of considering something, and perhaps that led to that paranoia.
This is where he's inventing it.
Yeah.
You're watching him invent WikiLeaks, and that's really exciting. You're also watching him before he's famous, walking around all by himself. One of my favorite shots is him just standing alone, munching on some kind of candy bar at a train station. Nobody's around him. You're used to seeing this media scrum whenever he goes anywhere.
Yeah.
He's a complete, hobo.
And there are these kind of legacy moments that he still has. I mean, Iceland being a prime example,
Yes.
where legislation was changed and he
Yes.
had an effect on the world, in a sense, in that way. I mean, so there's still a legacy of good somewhere within what he's done.
There's always going to be the example of what WikiLeaks did.
Yeah.
And it's a moment, it's kind of it's like a seam in history. I mean, there's a moment when things change, and that's WikiLeaks.
And the same with Bradley Manning. I mean, we all kind of feel, I feel as a kind of consumer of media, that he was this whistleblower for the sake of whistleblowing, for the sake of making sure he was acting for the greater good. But what I found coming out of your film is that here's this lonely guy looking for someone to understand him.
Yes.
And it seems like the whistleblowing perhaps was a consequence or, this other thing that happened just because he was reaching out for attention.
Well, look, I think in the case of Bradley Manning, you can't say it's either or. It's a mix.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what was interesting to me. So many people are so invested in making him a kind of political caricature.
Right.
It's like he's just a political actor. He wakes up in the morning and thinks politics, and now, and then he leaks for these political reasons. It's bullshit. He's a human being, and he's a welter of different motivations.
Yeah.
And you have to see him that way, because frankly speaking, Daniel Ellsberg accepted, most whistleblowers are disaffected, they're alienated. And I think it's Bradley's alienation which helps to, motivate him to do what he did.
Thinking, mentioning Ellsberg just gives me this image of him photocopying and photocopying and photocopying and photocopying. I'm like, he must look at Bradley Manning and go, that guy had it so easy.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah, because Ellsberg had to employ members of his family just to do the Xeroxing.
Right.
Yeah.
Poor guy. I feel sorry for him now.
Right, imagine having to Xerox all those Afghan war logs.
Exactly.
So it's taken forever.
I don't think there's been another Alex Gibney film that has a Lady Gaga soundtrack either. So that's
The Lady Gaga moment is fantastic.
But this is kind of indicative of, and she has this fan base that are called these pretty monsters or little monsters, and reaches out to people like Bradley Manning.
Well, she's
specifically.
She is. I wrote her a letter, frankly, in terms of trying to get that song cleared. And the two things I made clear were, one, this is about bullying, and two, it's about these gender issues, of which she's so. And both of those two issues are right up her alley. Bradley Manning is her guy.
Yeah.
Or her gal.
Yeah. Well, he's a guy at the moment, right?
Right.
Certainly doesn't have the freedom of choice at the moment.
Right. No, he's not. I don't think Fort Leavenworth is going to indulge him in any gender transformation at this moment.
Yeah. I'll try not to get off on a tangent on that issue. But with this film and having these kind of personal elements to kind of cover everyone from this PFC through to these generals commenting on these same issues, and yet they seem to all now have the power to do what Bradley Manning did. The fact that this PFC had access to these documents in the first place is kind of mind-blowing. And the fact that there seems to be this kind of desensitized views towards sharing data. Are we living in a most dangerous time as a result of this kind of ability to transact documents and transact information?
Well, we're living in a kind of Wild West, and we don't know what the rules are yet. Never before have governments had so much power to surveil and to invade our privacy and to keep secrets, but never have private citizens had exactly that same countervailing power to explore, to leak. So, and it can all be done at the, at the click of an electronic impulse.
Right.
So, and we're trying to figure out the rules. And now, you're right, Bradley Manning, the idea that he had the opportunity to do this, I think the military is motivated to sort of emphasize the idea of Bradley Manning bad guy so that they can take the heat off themselves. There's a certain amount of scapegoating going on here.
Yeah. And in terms of Arab Spring and its relationship to these releases of these papers, do you see a direct result between kind of the democracy, this sweeping declaration that these people wanted a sense of democracy anyway, and the timing of the WikiLeaks happenings?
Yeah, it's too simplistic to say there's a cause and effect.
Yeah.
WikiLeaks cables come out, democracy spring, Arab Spring happens. No. But I think they did contribute to the momentum building in Arab Spring.
Yeah.
And that's a fact, because they kind of peeled back the curtain, the Wizard of Oz curtain, and suddenly you see these diplomats saying very honest things about what's really going on in these countries.
Yeah.
And it validated everybody's sort of inchoate beliefs about the way things work, because here are these analysts saying it, but it was being hidden behind this realpolitik curtain. But suddenly, and some of them are very, honestly, very inspiring, some of the State Department cables.
Yeah.
So I think it was hugely important in terms of the Arab Spring process.
Yeah, it seems like it's high school rules all over again. It's like everyone's saying stuff behind everyone's back, and eventually someone's going to find out.
The fact is that the diplomacy, the idea of these people with their hands on their lapels, making grand speeches, obviously behind all of that facade is human behavior. It's petty, pathetic, and sometimes noble and magnificent, as we all are all the time.
Firstly, let me just say, on behalf of all journalists, please slow down. It's getting hard to keep up with all these great projects you got coming out. We're still kind of processing Mea Mex Culpa, which is enjoying its way into the world still as well. So congratulations on having so many projects that have these kind of important issues that people want to get behind and talk about. And we look forward to the next one.
Many thanks.
Cheers. Appreciate it.